You guys, this is the most intense skateboard I have ever ridden. So what is this? This is the Lithe Skateboard. So as long as we've been doing radical tricks on wheelie planks, we've had two problems that the Lithe is attempting to solve. Number one, boards getting soggy. Nobody likes a soggy skateboard. You lose pop and you lose control. Number two, razor tail. So that is, as your board starts to wear down here, it gets progressively thinner and it changes the way your skateboard feels, making it drag more and making your tricks just not feel as crisp and fresh as that new deck feel. So Lithe has come up with some very interesting technology to try and solve this problem. So number one, they've got a band of like this polymer, plastic stuff going all the way around the outside, and that's supposed to wear down much slower than a traditional maple board. And number two, it's got carbon fiber layers to reinforce it. So this does two things. One, it reinforces it so it's not going to break easily. It's going to take so much effort to break these boards. The other thing it does is it keeps the board feeling the same way, so it doesn't lose pop. Now, being someone that is very interested in skateboard technology, I've been very interested to try one of these out, and we're going to put it to the test over the next few weeks. So, first of all, I mean, look at this thing. It really is intense. But what it really reminds me of is a Walmart board. So, does a board that looks like a kid's board actually skate well? Yes, my shorts are that short, and it passes the flat ground test. So, can I keep skating it, or was it just good for a few tricks? It's amazing how the follow filming makes my shorts look even shorter. But anyways, as you guys can see, I'm actually able to skate this deck surprisingly well. So we're going to get into that more later in the video, but first off, I have to do something about the way this looks. Alright you guys, it's been a couple weeks, long enough for me to tell you guys what this board is like. But first, let me read you guys the dimensions. So this is the 8.125. Now let's check it out. It's bang on that way, bang on that way. The length of this board is 32, so it's pretty long for an 8.125. The wheelbase is 14 3/8. So, you know, it's kind of like a deluxe length wheelbase. And the nose and tail, what are they? So the nose is reading, you know, just about 7 inches. The tail is about 6 3/4 to the bolts. So that's not bad, but there's something about this shape that makes it feel a little bit off for a smaller deck. Now, I believe they only use one press right now, so it's getting used for all the decks. Now, what I noticed about this board is that from where the nose and tail starts to go up, from right here to right here, it's more geared towards a longer deck. So while the nose and tail lengths, like the measurements, are all on point, what it is there's actually a pretty big fingers of flat right here, you know, 3, but then a really steep kick. And so that concave, I don't know if you guys can see that, it's like this super short tail. So this chunk of the tail is steep and short, and the nose has that feel a little bit, but not as much as the tail. So that gives this deck an appearance of being longer than average for a smaller board. Now I think if you were riding these in the 8.25 and up, it wouldn't be as noticeable, because then you're starting to get to boards that have a longer space. Okay, let's compare it to my Element real quick. My Element is 32.25, and so you can see it's got a very different kind of concave. Like the Element is a pretty standard board, but this one, you know, it's just different. So the other thing that this has is it has a really big camber down this way. So like a low pro deck, it has a big curve. I don't know if that's gonna get picked up. So the proportions are more geared towards a bigger deck. So let's get into the general feel. The general feel is really flexible. You can see me bending it here. And it also feels mushier than you would think. So like it has kind of, it's strong in here, you know, like about to there, and then the sides feel pretty flexy, which is typical of a deck with flatter concave. We'll get into that. But the funny thing is this deck actually skates a lot better than it feels. Here's one more quick session just to keep your guys' attention. May not have been perfect, but that's the first one I've ever done. As you can see, yet again, I'm able to skate this board really well. It's not holding me back in performance. It just feels really different than other decks. And I'm also just really enjoying riding wide boards right now. So this being 8.125, and I'm currently riding an 8.5, like I'm having a hard time getting stoked on riding small decks right now. So I'm gonna keep it around. We'll get back to it probably. But right now, I gotta ride big boards, guys. Anyways, moving on to the next subject, which is the concave. So the concave is very flat across the nose and tail. So what some people don't know is your nose and tail actually have concave in it, sometimes up to 1/4 inch. So this has like a small 1/8 of concave, which leaves it feeling really flat. And that's also why it feels like when your foot is on here, that's also why it feels flat and maybe even a bit soggy. If it had more concave, it wouldn't feel as mushy. Okay, next, and part of that low pro-ish, like so part of the cambering is right in the very middle. It's like super flat again. So what we actually have here is we've got flat nose and tail, and then the concave ramps right up, right over the trucks, and then it goes down to flat again over the middle. And that's part of what leads it to feeling more flexible than it actually is. Like, it's flexible, but I think all of these qualities exaggerate the slightly mushy and flexible feel. So when you first step on it, it feels quite different than any other wood board that you've ridden. The other thing, and this comes down to personal preference, but I like a little bit more concave. Like if I had to choose a little bit more concave or a little bit less, I would choose on the little bit more side because it helps me feel like my feet are locked into the center of my board. So on this, when I'm doing my slides and grinds and all that sort of stuff, skating transition, anything, my feet don't feel quite as locked in as I like it to when I have them on the nose and tail. So that just leads me to feeling like I have less control. But again, that can be up to personal preference. I'm gonna go back a little bit. So as for what trucks I tried on this board, I had Indy forged hollows, 139s. Those felt amazing. It was like the perfect combination. The only other trucks I tried on it were Aces. And Aces left it feeling a little bit flat, but the manual session was on Aces. So the manuals were happening. And I don't think that this would feel super good on either Thunders or Venture lows. I mean, it depends, but I think it would feel too long and planky. It would stretch the wheelbase out too much, and the kicks would feel extra steep. So Indy Forged Hollows was literally perfect. I think I did my best skating on that combination with this. Okay, the slick. So the bottom is a bit of a slick, but it's not as much as like say an Ever Slick, you know, from Santa Cruz, or the Deluxe Slicks. So those are actually faster. This one was a little bit slower. So it was a bit more controlled. Although, you know what, like I kind of would rather have either like a wood feel or the actual pretty fast one. So I found this in between to be not quite where I want it, but you never know. Maybe it'll be the right in between for you. Okay, so here's a weird one, you guys. Let's get into these polymer tips. So there was one thing that I found to be reducing the slickness of the ledges, at least at the skate park that I skated. So these polymer tips actually have a way of plowing the wax off the ledge. So the Thompson ledges that I skate all the time were feeling stickier than ever. Wood decks are more porous and the wax gets kind of worked in, so the wax, you know, a wood deck just kind of like polishes the wax into the metal and concrete. But I really found these polymer tips to actually be snow plowing the wax off and making it sticky. So if anyone else has ridden these and noticed that, let me know. But you know, anytime you add something new, there's unexpected changes. And in my opinion, that's what I noticed about these polymer tips. Okay, but we're gonna get into more because obviously there's some pretty big positives to these. So first off, there's no more carbon fiber splinters. So this is a carbon fiber board, but you are getting no carbon fiber splinters, which can be really nasty on flight decks and other brands. Next, it really is impossible to chip, but you do need to be careful because the center of these is actually softwoods. I did actually take it and throw it on the ground a couple times just to show people, look, it doesn't chip. But I noticed that it was actually, the polymer was holding up and it's not chipping, but it was actually compressing a little bit. So it was pushing in. So don't abuse them, right? Like they're not gonna chip. But, you know, if you keep smashing them against something, the wood behind the polymer might actually get a bit soft. Next, how do the polymer tips feel? So some people were saying, oh, I could never skate that. I don't like the way it sounds. So they're making assumptions on how it feels because of how it sounds. But guess what? I actually liked the way the polymer tips felt. So there was no difference. When I skated a bamboo deck, I didn't like the way it felt. It felt dull, the thud was more dull, and it just felt like I had a lack of pop. I did not have that feeling on this. The polymer tips were pretty good. And now let's get into durability. I do think these are more durable. So right now we've got just about 2 weeks of wear here. It's very little. And I think that as it gets flatter, as it very slowly razor tails, I think it'll wear down even slower than a wood deck because the surface area gets bigger. Therefore it has more that it has to wear down. So on that note, I think that these actually will reduce razor tail. And I haven't skated it long enough to be able to tell you conclusively how long that would last me. But I have had one viewer who has ridden these and he has gotten 10 months out of his deck. Now he skates about once or twice a week, so it's not a lot, but he's getting out there and it lasted him 10 months. So, you know, what can I say? I bet you this would last me 2 months if I kept skating it. So maybe one of these days I'll jump back on it and see for longer. All right, now again, back onto the durability. So that is both a plus and a minus. So you're spending a lot of money. Yes, it's going to be durable. So if you like the way it feels, it's gonna be awesome. And if you like the graphics, you're gonna have them for a long time. Okay, now one last thing. So my first impressions video, I think I was a little bit harsh. So I've actually spoken to the owners since. And you know what? It's a couple of brothers who started out in their parents' garage. As for the graphics, you know, go on their website. They have a range of graphics and they may not all be my taste, but not every board needs to look like a polar board either. You know, I got to admit, I feel a little bit guilty for totally like cool guying the board and the graphics. Because on the other hand, these guys are putting out some of the most progressive skateboard technology out there. It's just a couple of brothers, they do skate, and they make the boards to the tastes that they have. And you know what? If you don't like it, then go be a cool guy somewhere else and don't ride their boards. The other thing is, this graphic is actually their #1 seller. So take that, Ben DeGro. What do I know? Anyways, that's it, you guys. I think they're cool boards. I personally would tweak a few things about the shape to make it suit my skating and my taste better. But you know what? Maybe you're not so sensitive on your skateboard. I just like things a certain way. So on that note, I'm gonna go. I'm losing light, if you can't tell. It's dark. I gotta skate, you guys. The light's going away. I'm here to skate. Time for me to shred. right here. I got some grinds to do. You go do some grinds. Okay. Bye. Skate or die, brah. Kind of. Why am I bothering?